Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday. I almost forgot what day it was. Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, November the 5th, 2020. It is currently 9:07 a.m. Central Time, and I'm once again here at Victory Baptist Church located in Ocala, Texas. And I've made an editorial decision, all right? This podcast I should be live on the air under the non-Catholic Catholic podcast, because that's the podcast really designed to talk about all things related to Catholicism. But I've made the editorial decision to go live under Theology Central, because this is the podcast where I first started reporting on this situation. So since I started here, then I need to finish our coverage and finish our discussion about this entire situation right here under the Theology Central podcast. All right. So that's why we're focused on, that's why this episode is going to be related to Pope Francis, Catholicism. I think this subject goes beyond simply Catholicism. I think this has relevance to anyone and everyone, and so hopefully you will show some grace and mercy and accept the fact that I'm talking about things that may be directly linked to Catholicism under the Theology Central podcast. And to be fair, that the Theology Central podcast, we talk about anything theologically related, and we talk about anything happening in the world from a theological perspective. So this podcast is also perfectly okay to talk about this as well. So I think most of you are pretty cool with whatever I talk about. Well, you may be cool about it. You just may decide not to listen, which is obviously you have the freedom to do that. But hopefully you'll find this discussion to be beneficial. All right. So let's put this. Let's set the stage for this, right? Let's give you kind of some context here, which that's going to become a very important concept for this entire discussion. But let's set the context. I don't even know how many weeks ago that it has been, because it feels like time right now is all bizarre. How to even tell time? It's like 1 week feels like a year, because so much happens in a week that it's hard to even imagine. Like, wait, all of that happened in 7 days, and then the next 7 days. Wait, all of that happened in 7 days. There's just so much. So there's a very good chance you may have heard about this and you've already moved on. I think most people have already moved on. But because I started reporting on it, I can't just move on. I have to at least try to follow this to some kind of conclusion, because I want to ensure that all of our reporting, when put together, gives a fair and accurate understanding of the situation, because we have more information. And I know most people have moved on, but I just think that that's not fair, because I don't believe the earlier reports gave a complete fair representation of everything. So I feel that we need to spend some time. So let me remind you, a few weeks ago, all right, it feels like a few weeks. I don't know exactly the date in front. I don't have the date in front of me right now, but a few weeks ago, all of these news reports started breaking that Pope Francis had issued some statements showing support for same-sex unions, right? And he made some comments that when you looked at them, you're like, okay, what exactly is he saying? And it led to all kinds of confusion. Those who, are part of the LGBTQ movement, believe in same-sex unions and all of these different things. They celebrated this, this basically, in their minds, marked a fundamental change in Catholic Church teaching, all right? So they went to that extreme. Others were like, no. Pope Francis didn't mean that. It was taken out of context. That's not what he actually said. You can't believe that. And, sometimes Pope Francis says things and it comes across the wrong way. So no, that's not what he said. So you had, hey, church teaching, Catholic Church teaching has been completely changed, and now we accept basically homosexuality. The other side was like, no, Pope Francis didn't change anything. He didn't mean what he seemed to say. It's taken out of context. And that's basically the two sides you ended up with. And for those of us in the middle trying to go, well, wait a minute here. What exactly did he say? What's going on? I would say in some cases we were kind of in the minority trying to, once again, to get to the truth. Now, one of the arguments that I made over and over and over again in all my reporting is what drives me crazy about Pope Francis and sometimes the Catholic Church is the Pope will say something that leads to all kinds of controversy. They almost wait. It seems like they wait like a week or two for the controversy to build and to build and to build. And then the Vatican just releases a statement saying, well, he didn't really mean that. Or they kind of take a few steps back from what the Pope appeared to say. And what I have constantly said is that to me is really, to me, is disingenuous. It's not handling the situation in a correct way, because here I am, right, in the middle of nowhere, Texas, in a little small church with no money, and we go live on the air multiple times a week, almost daily. If you consider how many hours we produce, it almost equals to at least an hour every single day of live broadcasting. So if I was to say something, say in a sermon on Sunday, and all of a sudden it created all kinds of controversy. And immediately when I saw all of that controversy and I'm like, whoa, I didn't mean to say it that way. That's not what I meant. I would immediately stop what I was doing, pack up my car with all of my podcast equipment, drive right back to this church, walk right through the front door, come right back to this table, hook everything up, go live and say, that's not what I meant. Here is what I believe. Now, if I can do that, then obviously the Vatican, with all of their money, with all of the things available to them, Pope Francis could go live at any moment and say, listen, everyone, that's not what I said. Here is what I believe. Here's the official teaching of the church. He could clarify it in seconds. So I believe it's a cop-out. I just believe it's not really being honest. If you don't believe and you didn't mean what you said, you can fix it in seconds. But no, we get basically silence or no comment, and no one wants to respond. And then finally, the Vatican comes out, and guess what we are told? The Vatican has come out, and now they're telling us that Pope Francis's words were taken out of context. Now, again, Pope Francis could just go live and say, here's the official teaching of the Roman Catholic Church in regards to homosexuality, gay marriage, LGBTQ. He could just literally, turn on the camera, turn on the microphone and say, here's what the Catholic Catechism teaches. Here is the official stance of the church. But no, this is what we get. I want you to hear this for yourself. All right. And you can draw your own conclusion, but I'm getting tired of both sides, either telling me it's taken out of context or saying that he's completely changed the teaching of the church. What everyone should be saying is, hey, Pope Francis, hey, Catholic Church, clarify your stance, make it clear. But here is the report. This was released Tuesday, November the 3rd, 2020. All right. Pope comments on civil unions were edited, lacked necessary contextualization, Vatican official. So according to a Vatican official, not Pope Francis, but a Vatican official is telling us that his comments on civil unions were edited and they lacked necessary contextualization. So here is the report. Recently released comments by Pope Francis seemingly supporting civil unions for same-sex couples were edited and not given necessary contextualization, according to a Vatican official. Last month, a documentary titled Francesco premiered in Rome, Italy, and seemed to show the pontiff expressing support for the blessing of civil unions for same-sex couples. And then this is in quotations. Homosexual people have a right to be in a family. They are children of God and have a right to a family. Nobody should be thrown out or be made miserable over it, said Francis in the film. Adding, what we have to create is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered. I stood up for that. And that ends the quote. Now, when we originally reported those statements, I was like, there's a lot there I don't understand. Like, what does he mean? They have a right to be in a family. Is he talking about just simply, in other words, in the civil world, in the state, they should have a right to have a family. However, the church would not recognize it being a biblical family or being, like you got to draw some kind of distinction there. What are you trying to say? They are children of God. What do you mean by that they are children of God? Are they children of God? Are you referring to in a salvific way? Are you just referring to that they are created, that they're children of God as far as creation is concerned? Like, what do you mean by that? I said there needed to be lots of clarification, but there was the basic comments. So in response to this, the Vatican sent out a statement to Catholic Church officials around the world explaining that the comments did not change church teaching on the issue. Again, now why? Why do they have to just release a statement to Catholic Church officials? It's not the Catholic Church officials who need it. It's every person in the world who read all of these news reports who need clarification. And the one person who can give clarification is Pope Francis saying, here, I'm going to, on Friday at this hour, I'm going to go live and I'm going to do a time of catechesis on the subject of LGBTQ homosexuality. And I'm going to reinforce, restate, make clear the official teaching, the dogmatic teaching of the Roman Catholic Church. He can do that. That's the part that I just think this is all just feels like a cop-out and just playing games. The statement explained that the comments of Francis in the recorded interview were edited and published as a single answer without the necessary contextualization. It is clear that that Pope Francis was referring to particular state regulations, certainly not the doctrine of the Church, which he has reaffirmed numerous times over the years, added the statement, as reported by the National Catholic Reporter. Okay, so he, according to them, I am thankful for this clarification. Again, I just think the Pope Francis it's his comments. He should make the clarification. That's just the way it should work. All right. But I do appreciate this because I can understand saying, look, in the civil law, if the state wants to make a law supporting same-sex unions, to give them legal protection, fine. But again, it looks like you would make it very clear. However, for the church would not be able to recognize that civil union as anything in the church. It's not a marriage. It's not anything in the church. And those who are in those unions engaged in a homosexual relationship, physical relationship, that would be still condemned in the church, and they would be told to repent and to abstain from said activity. Like, you would want to make that as clear as day, but and all they say is, it didn't change church teaching. Well, then how about you reinstate clearly what church teaching is, since the press went crazy with this? Let's continue. They have this statement next. The Vatican explained that the comments come from a 2019 interview in which the pontiff was explaining his support for Argentina legalizing civil unions instead of same-sex marriage. All right, that does provide context, and I'm thankful for that. That is good. We want that context because we want to be fair, right? So in Argentina, he supported the legalization of civil unions instead of same-sex marriage. Okay, fine. Now again, you'd think he would also reinstate how the church would handle this. Here's two people. They come into the church. They have been blessed by the state as having a same-sex union. Now, how does the church respond to that? That's the real question. As noted by the Jesuit publication American Magazine, Francis' support for civil unions instead of gay marriage nevertheless contradicted a 2003 document signed by Pope Benedict. All right, now wait. Pope Benedict signed a document condemning it. Pope Francis just gave support for it. So, hey, Catholic Church, you still need to make clear what's going on. The document stated that support for LGBT individuals cannot lead in any way to approval of homosexual behavior or to legal recognition, if I can speak right this morning, of homosexual unions. So Pope Benedict said, hey, I'm going to state it again, that it cannot lead in any way to approval of homosexual behavior or to legal recognition of homosexual unions. That's what Pope Benedict said. So Pope Francis has now contradicted Pope Benedict. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that they both made infallible statements. I'm not stating that. I'm not stating that they were both defining church dogma. I'm not stating that. But the two popes clearly contradict one another. So why can't they clarify this? So does the Catholic Church now support same-sex unions, or do they not? Which is it? Clarify. Don't just tell me statements were ripped out of context. Clarify. Give us the correct context. I think that's a good way of stating it. News of Pope Francis's comments in the film garnered much celebration among LGBT advocacy groups like the Human Rights Campaign, which interpreted them as changing Catholic theology. See, that's the problem. Everyone started running around. Catholic theology has been changed. Catholic teaching has been changed. The only one who can really clarify that is for the Pope. He could write a document saying, here is the dogmatic teaching of the church. This agrees with what's stated in the Catholic Catechism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he can sign it. He could clarify this in seconds. Today, this is another statement here. This is from another group. Today, this is how they responded to Pope Francis' original comments as they were reported. Today, Pope Francis took a significant step for inclusion and acceptance in the Catholic Church by embracing unions for same-sex couples and affirming that LGBTQ Catholics are part of their religious family. See, that's how groups were interpreted. They go on by shifting Catholic theology in a more inclusive direction and making clear that LGBTQ people have a right to their own families. Pope Francis is letting LGBTQ Catholics know that being a person of faith and being LGBTQ are not mutually exclusive. Look, you're going to have to do more than release a statement saying his words were taken out of context. No, you're going to have to define clearly what the official teaching is. James Martin, a Jesuit priest and editor of at large of American Magazine, said in a statement on Twitter that he believed Francis' comments were a major step for the Catholic Church. It is in keeping with his pastoral approach of LGBT people, including LGBT Catholics, and sends a strong signal to countries where the Church has opposed such laws. The comments also garnered criticism from many conservative Catholics and evangelical Protestants, among them Southern Baptist Convention President J.D. Greer. No matter what a pope, pastor, or elected official says, we do not get to define sexuality or the family. The Creator does this, and on this his word could not be more clear. So there you have it. They've released a statement saying it's taken out of context. It doesn't change official church teaching, but there's still a lot of confusion out there. There's still a lot of people who don't understand. And again, it could be fixed within a couple of seconds. That's the part that bothers me the most about all of this. I think I have another article here. Give me 1 second. I have a bunch of things for you in regards to this subject. Here we go. Let me open this. Here's another article, and I like their headline. And this is from a Catholic site. Bottom line. It says, bottom line on Pope movie mystery. If you don't fix it, you bought it. All right? So this is from a Catholic site saying, bottom line, if you don't fix it, you bought it. Now, what do they mean by that? This is what they have to say. When I was a child growing up in a small western Kansas town, my mom from time to time would take me to Main Street to visit the shops. Most had some version of the following sign on display, meant as a warning to be careful with the merchandise. You break it, you bought it. All right? There's in the public relations world, there is an idea that could be said like this. No matter who breaks it, if you don't fix it, you bought it. It means that no matter what a leader actually says or does, if he or she allows an impression to be created and doesn't publicly disown it, then it belongs to them. All right? Now, I'm going to say, if Pope Francis doesn't come out and publicly fix this, then he owns it. He bought it. It's his. That's the impression he has created. This thought came to mind in light of the emerging mystery surrounding the new Pope documentary Francisco, which debuted this week and already is a candidate to contain the most dissected 20 seconds of imagery about a major world leader, pretty much in a long time found in a film. I mean, it's just a short segment in the film, and it's already being dissected and dissected and taken apart. Yeah, dissected, dissected, and being taken apart and being taken apart. And, someone needs to do something about it. And in those 20 seconds, Pope Francis makes comments about civil unions for same-sex persons that created a global media frenzy on Wednesday, reported as the first time a pope explicitly had endorsed civil unions. It also appeared to directly contradict a 2003 document from the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, prepared by the future Pope Benedict and approved by St. John Paul II, warning that such laws are gravely unjust and insisting that Catholics may never support them. So you had basically ultimately two popes who would agree with that statement that you can't support these laws. And then Pope Francis comes along, makes comments that approves the law, and the best we can get is they're taken out of context. He was approving the law. Well, if he was approving the law as simply a civil union and it wasn't changing church teaching, it still goes against the official teaching of the church or the official stance of the church, which is you can't support those laws, even the civil laws. So the Catholic Church has to add, they've got to clarify this. This article continues. Within 48 hours, however, the narrative began to shift because it emerges that those celebrated 20 seconds aren't one continuous statement from Pope Francis, but rather a montage of lines uttered in different contexts, stitched together and covered by strategically timed camera cutaways. One Italian analyst claimed yesterday that there were 5 separate elements of film and therefore at least 4 edits contained in that 20-second span, which has to be some kind of record. Now, if that is true, then the filmmaker should be held responsible. But again, who can clarify it? Pope Francis can clarify it. Moreover, it's not seemingly clear that the bit on civil unions didn't come from conversations with Pope Francis, but a different interview that the Pope gave 18 months ago to a Mexican journalist. So it looks like that maybe that what they put in the film wasn't even an interview that the producers of the film, the director of the film, was having with Pope Francis. They took an older interview and inserted it into the film. So in other words, the film didn't seem to provide any context as well, which is very misleading. And the film directors should be called for this. And the Catholic Church should condemn the film for not representing Pope Francis accurately. Let's see here. The overall suggestion is that Pope Francis spoke of giving legal cover to same-sex relationships and of a law on civil coexistence. In that 2019 interview, and that's what he seemed to do in that 2019 interview. But that since his language has been taken out of context, there's no way to assess what he actually meant. And some quarters, with the director of the film in tandem with certain journalists, already have emerged as the villains of the narrative, at fault for creating a piece of fake news in order to promote a film or to advance an agenda. That's how some people are handling this. This is all fake news. You can't trust it. This was edited to death. All right. Again, that all may be true, and the Catholic Church should issue a statement strongly condemning the director, strongly condemning the film, and renouncing it and saying it has nothing to do with Catholicism, and this is not accurate. Now, this is where the article makes a very important point. There's just one problem with all of this. The Vatican hasn't denied that Pope Francis supports civil unions, despite the fact that for the last 48 hours, a global impression has been created that he does. Not only has the Vatican not disputed the contents of the film, last night, the director received an award in the Vatican gardens in the presence of senior Vatican communication officials and an indirect seal of approval if there ever was one. So look, while they can be claiming that it was all edited and that the director misrepresented it, a lot of Catholics are trying to claim that, the film director received an award for the film in the Vatican gardens. Well, if that means they're not condemning the director. They're not condemning the movie. So which is it? Was he taken out of, it was taken out of context, but we love the movie anyway, and we love you, and so come to the Vatican gardens and we're going to give you an award. As things stand, therefore, it almost doesn't matter what sleight of hand the director may have performed in the cutting room. Francis and his team know full well what most people think, he said, and haven't done anything to correct it, which means, as things stand, they own the impression. They own it. It's theirs. They can't say, well, it's ripped out of context and all this other stuff. They own it. This is what it says. In fact, let me go back here to this. So here's the bottom line of this article. I'm going to give you the bottom line of this article. Did Pope Francis actually say in that 2019 interview what the movie makes it appear he said? Not exactly, because what we see in Francesco is they put together a number of phrases uttered in different contexts. And in the absence of more information, it's impossible to know precisely what Francis had in mind. So from that film, it's really impossible for us to know exactly what Pope Francis meant. All right, that is good to know. However, does it matter? The answer is probably not. Why? If Pope Francis didn't want you to believe that he supports civil unions, he's got plenty of tools to set the record straight. Until that happens, no amount of breaking down the tape is likely to make much of a difference. That's the issue. He could fix it. He hasn't. The best we can get is, that's taken out of context. No official church teaching was changed. Okay, well, wait a minute. No official church teaching was changed. Even that's playing games. What about the 2003 statement signed by Cardinal Ratzinger before he becomes Pope Benedict, approved by John Paul II, which says Catholics cannot support civil union laws? So it may not be the official, you can say, well, it didn't change official church teaching, but it does go against what has been agreed upon by two previous popes. So just saying it's taken out of context is not clarification. It's not. And I just want you to hear, I want you to have all of that information. You want to be fair. And so I'm going to state it again. I don't know what Pope Francis thinks. I have no idea. I know that he is given an impression and he owns that impression. And unless he changes that impression, I'm sorry, you can say all day, that's not the official Catholic teaching. I'm sorry, the Pope, the leader of the church, is giving a completely different impression. And there's lots of LGBTQ groups out there who think he they think that he did change church teaching. So how does this impact the average Catholic parish and how that priest handles things and how they handle these situations? One priest obviously wasn't happy about this situation. Someone sent this to me. It's a homily from a Catholic church. Now, in typical Catholic fashion, it's like an 11-minute homily. I don't get that. I don't know how you're supposed to survive as a Catholic if you get 11 minutes of preaching every time you go to church. But I want to play it for you. We'll analyze this. We'll see what they have to say, and we'll take this apart. I just wanted to provide even more context because, listening to me, obviously I'm not a Catholic. Obviously I'm the pastor of a Baptist church. So you may say, he's not looking at this, from a Catholic perspective. So let's listen to a Catholic priest and a homily. Let's see what he has to say about this situation. And, you can add this to your understanding of this entire situation. So let's listen to this. Here we go.
You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now, the first commandment is the love of God. The second is the love of neighbor. And there's an order to this charity. The love of God must come first because he's the creator and the redeemer of all things. And he's expressed his will not only outwardly by the sacred scriptures and the tradition, but also manifested by the way he made things. That's called the natural law. And the love of neighbor, this second, is based upon this love of God and the love of the will of God. And we have to have this ordered charity or we make all kinds of mistakes. Again, we say the second is like it. That word like it comes from the likeness to God. Remember back in Genesis, man and woman were made in the image and the likeness to God. We're not gods. We're made in his image and his likeness. Again, we see the order to charity established right from the beginning. If we put the love of neighbor first, we begin to forget God. We undermine the likeness to God by pretending that we're the ones who are gods. We might become utterly self-absorbed, or we might become just do-gooders. We love those that it makes me feel good to love. Maybe you've noticed those wonderful commercials on television for hospitals with the handicapped children. And they're so sweet. They're so kindly. They're so beautiful. They're so wonderful. And our hearts go out and our wallets open up because it makes us feel good to love them. It's not wrong in itself. But what about if we forget all those that are more deformed? We might fail to love the deformed, might fail to love the unborn. We can destroy charity altogether, following our feelings and pretending that it's charity. We can even be led into a false compassion that doesn't truly help people, but makes us feel good about that while leaving them enslaved in their pain. We can even end up with the brotherhood of man without the fatherhood of God. All of these are problems from a disordered charity. The love of God must come first because it brings with it the truth. And then we're able to love our neighbor well.
Now, that is brilliant. That is actually amazing. It's brilliant. And I think it's something that we should all meditate and think much about. There's an order. You have to love God first. The commandments go, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. The love of neighbor must flow first from a love of God. And if we put love of neighbor in front of love of God, if we reverse this order, it leads to all kinds of problems. It leads to kind of a sentimental, mushy kind of Christianity about loving people. But yes, you love people, but you love people because you love God first. And therefore, loving God establishes what love is, establishes truth, establishes right, establishes wrong. And that carries into how we love others. We may love other people, but we cannot violate God's standard of truth, morality, etc., etc. So this, having the right order of charity versus a wrong order of charity, This is a very brilliant concept. I'm sad that he's the whole homily is only 11 minutes because I wish he would go like a whole hour talking about this. I think it's a brilliant conversation, a brilliant idea that we should have a very in-depth conversations about. The right order of charity versus the wrong order of charity. If we reverse the order, we create all kinds of problems. And you could ask yourself within Christianity, how many times have we reversed the order where love of person, love of others trumps the love of God? The love of God must go first. And then flowing from a love of God, it should flow into a love of others. I think this is a very important concept, and let's see how he's going to utilize this possibly in light of this entire controversy about Pope Francis and his comments. Let's listen.
This past Wednesday, a documentary film on the life of Pope Francis was released. And the film was entitled Francesco, directed by an Israeli-American filmmaker, Evgeny Afanevsky. In it, Pope Francis is seen stating his support for some form of legal recognition of homosexual civil unions. Again, this endorsement of civil unions for same-sex couples is deeply troubling. It repudiates the unchangeable truth in the teachings of St. John Paul II, that respect for homosexual persons cannot lead in any way to approval of homosexual behavior or to legal recognition of homosexual unions, and that the legal recognition of homosexual unions or placing them on the same level as a marriage would mean not only the approval of deviant behavior with the consequence of making it a model for present-day society, but would also obscure the basic values which belong to the common inheritance of humanity. In other words, this is going to require some correction, a significant walkback of some sort. In addition to endorsing civil unions, Pope Francis says that homosexuals have a right to a family. What are we to make of this? There is evidence that Afanevsky has egregiously taken this statement from the videotape in 2019, an interview with Pope Francis by a Mexican journalist, and taken it out of context. Pope Francis was, in fact, speaking about the right of homosexuals not to be rejected by their own families. He was not talking about homosexuals creating new families of their own, presumably by adoption or through surrogate motherhood. The problem remains the Vatican has publicly embraced the film, and the Pope's right to a family comments are now being widely interpreted in the media in ways surely intended by the director, but not by Pope Francis. So the Vatican has a duty to issue a correcting statement clearly that Pope Francis is not giving endorsement to a right to adoption of children by homosexual couples. The Church has always taught that there is no right of two men or two women living in an immoral relationship to adopt children. Catholic doctrine teaches that homosexual persons should refrain from same-sex activity, not enter into sinful relationships that can lead to mortal sin. Pope Francis' remarks will give encouragement to all those who, Catholic or not, will reject the Church's teaching that sodomy is an inherently evil act. And those who already reject the Church's teaching will claim the Church now accepts homosexual activity as something good when it offers a real good life of a family of some sort. And in the context the Pope has placed it, the same-sex families deserve not only legal protection via civil unions, but also societal approval. This is a mistake. This too will require correction. This is not the faith of the Church. We have to be very clear about these things. Pope Francis' teaching has already had a terrible consequence for the faithful already. One young couple that I know, they're married a couple of years. They have one small child. They've been doing their best to live a wonderful, strong, faithful Catholic life. And the husband came home after all of this news had broken this week. He looked up on the wall and he saw this giant framed picture of a papal blessing with all the beautiful scroll work and the Vatican approval and the picture of Pope Francis in the middle. And he took that down off of the wall and he set it aside. And there's a reason. Because his struggle to live a strong, faithful Catholic life has really cost him a battle in his family of origin. His family supported his marriage and then demanded that he support his sister's gay marriage. And he knew that he couldn't do it. He knew that would be wrong. He knew that would be a huge mistake. And he stood with the Church. He suffered for the sake of the Church. And now he feels betrayed by Pope Francis. Rather than building bridges, the Pope is burning bridges in this case. And so we recognize that all of our charity has to be about the love of God first, and then the love of the truth, the way that he made things. And then we love our neighbor well. Then we love our neighbor properly. That's how this is supposed to work. Now, again, we should remind ourselves that Christ is the head of the Church. The Pope is the vicar of Christ. The Pope is a witness to the faith. And the Pope, the successors of Peter, are to confirm the brethren in sound doctrine. But the Pope is not an all-powerful authority who can change Catholic doctrine according to his own way of thinking. Now, we want to love God and our neighbor, and this can only be done in the truth, the way things really are. And this is an opportunity to reaffirm what the Church teaches about marriage. Now, marriage must necessarily occur between people of the opposite sex because marriage is meant for procreation and the education of children. Did you know that marriage is about procreation first? Marriage is about romance and personal fulfillment second. Not that it isn't important to have romance and happiness within one's marriage. These are there so that we can more effectively raise our children. Romance there, as it were, is only a means to a greater end. Is there really a difference between civil unions and gay marriage? It's a distinction without a real difference. The reason the state bestows legal benefits upon married people of the opposite sex is to help them in raising their children. In this sense, such benefits have no real use for couples of the same sex. They inherently cannot raise children that are from both of them. What about children of a same-sex couple? Again, those children have the right to parents, a mother and a father. Doesn't this make these children any less? No, their children have a dignity. And in fact, that dignity of human beings demands that they be brought into the world again, raised by a biological mother and a father. They are not to be a product to be purchased or created in a laboratory so that their same-sex parents can have a personal fulfillment of having children. And the same with adopted children. They too have a right to a mother and a father. You see where false compassion can lead us astray. Putting the love of neighbor ahead of the love of God separates us from the truth and leads us to offer false compassion in ways we ought not. What has caused this distorted view of marriage, of putting romance first, of putting personal wants above all else? Without question, it's been society's wholesale acceptance of contraception. By separating the marital act from procreation, it's caused us to erroneously think of sexual activity as all about personal fulfillment, and the children become accessories. Once we take this view of marriage, or even of a civil union, there's no reason not to grant them partners of those of the same sex, to grant them this status. If marriage is merely about fulfilling one's own or one's partner's personal desires, then the love of neighbor has taken place ahead of God. We can't logically, therefore, deny anyone the right to seek their own personal fulfillment. If that's number one, all other acts appear equal. No reason to stop same-sex unions. No reason to stop polygamy. As long as they love each other, what would be the difference? And it goes on and on. You can name the vice. As long as people are consenting, it would seem to be true. And yet, that's not okay. So, why should we not want people to have their desires fulfilled? You and I are not merely a bag of chemicals mixed together, beholding to our own disordered desires. We're images of God. We're made in His image and likeness. We have a mind and a will. We can know the order. We can see what God intended for us. We can find our fulfillment in walking and acting as images of God. We can know the truth. And we also know that that must lead to fulfillment. And acting against our own dignity always brings self-destruction. Very important to recognize. Acting against our own dignity always destroys us. If we should do that as a society, it wounds the entire society. Again, we're made in this image and likeness of God. We're created in love, and we're made for love. We are inherently lovable. To love someone as a means to helping them live in accord with that truth, that's fulfillment. To help someone achieve personal goals outside of the truth is false compassion. Doesn't this make those with same-sex attraction feel less than others? Doesn't it make them feel as though they're outside of the church? Nothing could be further from the truth. A man or woman with same-sex attraction who embraces the cross as their own way of life, living chastity, they're living a holy life. Without the consolation of starting a nuclear family of their own, without the consolation of religious life or the priesthood. No, these are not outsiders to the church. They're at the very heart of the church. They're witness of the most profound, the most real truth of all, that there is a consolation beyond the consolations of this world, beyond what we might find in personal pleasures, that embracing the hardship for the sake of the truth, who is God Himself, is worth infinitely more than any happiness this life could offer. Those who follow this path, in the words of St. Paul today, embrace the word in great affliction with joy from the Holy Spirit. They become a model for the rest of us believers, that we too can embrace our lesser crosses for the sake of our own idols, for our own personal fulfillment, for the greater happiness that God holds out before us. Yes, we are called to embrace the truth with love. This is the context for Jesus' teaching. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself.
Now, there's some very, very powerful arguments being made there, offering a clear understanding of Catholic teaching. However, here's the problem. He's not the Pope. That's a Catholic priest at a Catholic parish somewhere. I don't even know what state that's from. It's the Vatican has to clarify. Not just the Vatican releasing a statement saying it's taken out of context. Well, if it's taken out of context, why did you celebrate the film, recognize the film, and give the film an award in the Vatican Gardens? Look, if it doesn't represent what Pope Francis said, you should condemn the film. You shouldn't be handing out an award, and Pope Francis can clarify it all if he wants to. To me, the Vatican and Pope Francis are playing a game, and they're in a way undermining Catholic teaching and undermining, I would say, local priests and local parishes. They're undermining them. And they're doing so in to me, a deceitful way. If you want to change it, then change it. And if Catholic teaching doesn't allow you to change it, then don't even attempt. Then live according to the teaching of the church, or get out. It's one way or the other. So it just seems like they're undermining it, and they're doing so in a very deceptive way, and they're playing a game. So I just wanted to at least bring all of this to some kind of a conclusion where you had all of the context, what everyone is saying, what's happening actually in a Catholic parish where someone is preaching. I bet you in other Catholic homilies, they may have taken a different approach. I bet you it would be interesting if I'm not going to sit here and spend hours and hours and hours going through all the Catholic homilies preached in relation to this. But there are some very liberal Catholic parishes who probably viewed this in a completely different way. So, I think the whole situation requires, I would say this, in a way, hey, Pope Francis, you kind of broke this situation, and now you've bought it. You own it. It's yours. And you're either going to clarify it or you're not going to clarify it. And if you don't clarify it, you're going to have more confusion than there already is. And I think that is where we will leave this discussion. You can email me your thoughts about the Catholic Church and what they're doing in regards to this subject. Obviously, I reject the Catholic Church on a lot of theological grounds, a lot of theological reasons. But when big breaking news happens that relates to theology and doctrine, we talk about it. So there you have it. I think that kind of brings everything into a context and gives you the latest. If more information comes out about this situation, if Pope Francis does release an actual statement, then obviously we'll be talking about it either here or on the non-Catholic Catholic podcast. All right. Thank you very much. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. All right. Everyone have a great day. God bless.